Have you ever poured your heart into something, an idea, a vision, a dream, and been met with silence, not resistance, not debate, just silence? You pitched your idea, you raised your hand, you offered your perspective, and the room didn't just disagree, it ignored you. That's a pain most people don't talk about. It's not failure, it's something worse, irrelevance. But here's the truth. The ignored are often the ones the world regrets overlooking. Because silence doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means they couldn't see what you see. Think about it. Every person who has ever changed the world started by being dismissed. When we look at the stories of great innovators, disruptors, visionaries, there's a common thread that runs through all of them. Rejection, not once, not twice, repeatedly, over and over, and not because what they had to offer wasn't valuable, but because what they were offering didn't fit into the existing mold. It didn't look familiar, it didn't sound like what people were used to hearing. It made them uncomfortable, and human beings by nature resist what they don't understand. Oprah Winfrey was told she was unfit for television. They said she was too emotional, too raw, and yet what became her weakness in the eyes of a few became her greatest strength. The very thing that made her different was the thing that allowed her to connect with millions. That authenticity, that heart, that vulnerability. If she had accepted the first judgment as fact, we would have missed out on one of the most impactful voices in modern media. J.K. Rowling sent her manuscript to 12 publishers. One after another, they said no. Some said fantasy didn't sell. Some didn't even bother replying. She was a single mother, unemployed, writing in cafes, holding on to nothing but a story and a stubborn sense that it mattered. That one story, Harry Potter, would go on to change an entire generation. But at the start, it was just a stack of papers no one wanted to read. Howard Schultz believed in an idea that at the time sounded ridiculous: get Americans to pay premium prices for European-style coffee experiences. Fancy coffee in the land of bottomless diner mugs? He was turned down by Think about that. 217 people said no, this won't work. But one finally said yes, and that was enough. Now here's the part most people miss. Rejection isn't a sign to quit. It's a sign you're ahead. The truth is, the crowd doesn't applaud innovation when it first shows up. It questions it, criticizes it, laughs at it, because innovation by definition is uncomfortable. It's not incremental, it's disruptive. It doesn't ask permission, it redefines the rules entirely. That's the cost of bringing something new into the world. At first, people won't know what to do with you. Your ideas won't fit into their categories. Your energy might be too much. Your passion might feel unrealistic. Your dream might sound naive. But maybe that's exactly why it matters. Most people try to get noticed by being louder. But the real game changers, they don't add to the noise, they change the sound. They introduce something entirely new, something so different it's met with silence or resistance at first. And that's okay. That's part of the process. The ignored ones are the ones who are seeing something others don't see yet. And that's not a reason to stop. That's a reason to keep going. So if you're being ignored, if your ideas are falling flat in rooms you thought would understand, don't take it as a sign of failure. Take it as confirmation. It's possible you're not being overlooked because you're irrelevant. It's because you're too early, and early always feels lonely. The most groundbreaking ideas in history weren't born in boardrooms. They were born in garages, coffee shops, basements, places no one was watching. And yet they changed the world. Not because someone gave them a chance, but because their creators didn't wait for someone to validate them. You don't need everyone to believe. You just need to believe long enough for the rest to catch up. And when they finally see it, when the world finally notices, they'll call you a genius. But the truth is, you were simply brave enough to keep going when no one was clapping. Being ignored can feel like a verdict. It can feel final, like a closed door you're not meant to knock on again. You offer your idea, your voice, your heart, and the world meets you with silence. No applause, no recognition, just the sound of your own doubt echoing back at you. In that moment, it's easy to think you're not enough, that maybe they're right to overlook you, that maybe you're not cut out for this. But what if that silence isn't a verdict at all? What if it's a test, not of your talent, but of your resilience? What if the silence is there to ask you one question? How badly do you really want this? The world doesn't give out easy wins, especially not to the ones doing something different, especially not to the ones trying to lead instead of follow. The test isn't whether they believe in you, it's whether you do. There's a story I always go back to. Sarah Blakely, before Spanx, before she became a billionaire, before she disrupted the entire fashion industry, she was selling fax machines door to door. Think about that, not a fancy tech startup, not a glamorous launch, just walking into offices where people didn't know her, didn't care and didn't want what she was selling. Most people wouldn't have lasted a week. And she didn't just face polite disinterest. People literally closed doors in her face, told her no, ignored her pitch, treated her like she didn't belong. That kind of rejection breaks most people, not because it's cruel but because it's quiet. It doesn't scream at you, it whispers doubts that grow louder the longer you sit with them. But she did something remarkable. She didn't absorb the rejection, she didn't let it define her. She saw every no not as failure, but as data, a signal that she was still in the game, still showing up, still moving. She used the silence not as a wall to stop her, but as fuel to drive her. Every door that closed just made her more certain that the right one was out there, that she'd find it, or build it herself if she had to. That's what makes someone unstoppable. The ones who last aren't always the smartest or the most talented. They're the ones who refuse to stop when they're not seen. They don't need a standing ovation to take the next step. They generate their own momentum. They validate themselves from within. If you need the world to tell you that you're good enough before you move, you'll stay stuck. Because the world is slow to believe in what it hasn't seen before. It wants proof, and often you have to become the proof before the world is willing to look. Silence isn't personal. It's just part of the process, a quiet space where you either give up or grow strong. And the ones who grow stronger, who keep going despite the silence, are the ones who eventually create the kind of impact that can't be ignored. So when no one's clapping, when no one's calling your name, when it feels like you're invisible, don't stop, lean in. Trust your vision more than their validation. Let their silence sharpen your focus, not shake your faith. Because the truth is, the world doesn't always recognize greatness in real time. Sometimes it needs you to go first. Sometimes it needs you to become the example it didn't know it needed. And once you do, the same people who ignored you will wish they had listened. Let me tell you what happens in the dark, when no one's watching, when the applause fades and the cameras are off, when you're not trending, not being noticed, not being praised. That's when the real work begins. That's where growth lives. Not in the spotlight, not on the stage, but in the quiet, unglamorous seasons where most people quit and the few who stay transform. You wake up early or stay up late, not because someone told you to, but because something inside you won't let you settle. You show up to the gym, to the studio, to the desk, again and again. You try, you fail again. You keep failing until something clicks. No one's watching, and if they are, they're not impressed. But it's not about them. You're not doing it for recognition. You're doing it because something deep inside you knows this matters. And the truth is, these moments, these silent, unseen repetitions, are the birthplace of every success story we celebrate. These aren't the moments you post about, the ones that go viral, the ones that people cheer for. These are the gritty, exhausting, quiet moments that build the foundation for everything else. When a seed is planted, it doesn't bloom instantly. It's buried beneath the soil. It's covered in darkness, forgotten, but that doesn't mean nothing is happening. In fact, it's the opposite. That seed is beginning to take root, to form its identity. It's digging deep into the earth, to become strong enough to one day break through the surface. And when it finally does, it doesn't just survive, it thrives. The same thing happens with people. If you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, invisible, don't be so quick to assume you're failing. Maybe you're just in the soil. Maybe this is your season to grow roots. Because strength isn't built in the applause, it's built in the silence. It's built in those lonely hours when you keep showing up and no one seems to care. When you push through doubt and fatigue and fear, and still find a reason to try one more time. Ask any elite athlete. The wins on game day are the result of thousands of hours of work. When no one was the early morning sprints, the injuries, the repetition. Ask any great artist. The beauty you see in their masterpiece was born out of years of drafts, rejection, and starting over. Ask any great leader. The wisdom they speak with didn't come from always being right. It came from failing quietly and learning painfully. Growth, Real growth happens when no one is clapping for you, when you're not rewarded, not acknowledged, and yet you keep going. That's where discipline is built. That's where purpose becomes clearer. That's where character is forged. And one day when the season changes, when the light returns and the stage finds you, people will call you an overnight success. They'll think you just appeared, but you'll know the truth. You were growing all along, just out of sight. You weren't buried to be forgotten. You were planted to rise. And when you do rise, it won't just be because you were talented or lucky. It will be because you chose not to give up during the quiet season. Because you believed in something before anyone else could see it. Because you were willing to grow, even when it felt like no one was watching. Let's be honest, there's a voice inside all of us that wants to be seen. We want to be recognized, acknowledged, understood. When you work hard, when you give everything, when you stay up late chasing something that no one else can quite see, there's a part of you that quietly hopes someone notices, that someone says, "I believe in you." And when that recognition doesn't come, when people overlook you, or doubt you, or pretend you're not even in the room, it stings. It makes you question yourself. Maybe you're not as ready as you thought. Maybe they're. But here's what most people don't realize. The most unstoppable people in the world didn't rise to the top because they were desperate to prove others wrong. They rose because they believed they were meant for more, long before anyone else could see it, and they refused to let go of that belief. You don't become unstoppable to get revenge on the people who doubted you. You become unstoppable to keep a promise you made to yourself. Maybe years ago, maybe when you were just a kid, when you said, "This matters, I'm not giving up on this." The people who achieve the impossible are the ones who keep that promise when no one else is listening, when the lights are off, and when walking away would be the easier path. But yes, there will be a day when the world turns its head. Suddenly, your name is on the screen. Your voice is in the room. Your work is undeniable. And the same people who ignored you, they'll act like they always knew. Of course they were going to make it. They'll quote your words, share your videos, retell your story with pride because now it's safe to believe in you. That's the strange thing about success. It invites people to rewrite history, to pretend they always saw your potential, but you'll know better. You'll remember the early days, the quiet, the rejection, the doubt, the long stretch of time when you had no applause, no audience, just your own stubborn will to keep going. You'll remember the moments where giving up would have made perfect sense, but something in you wouldn't let. You'll remember how you stood up after every setback, how you moved forward without clarity, how you bet on yourself again and again, and you'll realize that the greatest achievement wasn't the result at the end. It was the decision to keep going when the outcome was still uncertain. And that's the part no one can take from you. They can share your success, they can ride your wave, but they can't claim your journey. They weren't there in the quiet moments when it was just you and your dream, and the silence in between. That's what makes you unstoppable, not the outcome but the grit, the heart, the refusal to give up on yourself. When you finally arrive, it won't feel like a victory over others. It'll feel like a reunion with the version of you who always believed this was possible. And in that moment you won't need the world to say we were wrong, because you'll already have proven something far more important, that you were right, that your belief in yourself was never wasted, that the risk you took on your own potential was the best bet you ever made, and the regret that will belong to the ones who didn't look twice, the ones who had the chance to believe early but chose not to, the ones who now wish they had stood beside you, back when you were still rising. If you're being ignored, if the world around you hasn't noticed your effort, your passion, your persistence, good, because that means you're in the right place, not the easy place, not the popular place, but the right one. The place where growth begins. Because real change, real impact, doesn't start in the spotlight. It starts in the shadows, in the quiet, in the places no one thinks to look. Too often we spend our energy chasing recognition. We want the likes, the shares, the praise. We want someone to say you're doing great, because that validation feels like fuel. But there's a dangerous illusion in that. If we depend on applause to move forward, we stop when it disappears. If our progress is driven by attention, then the moment attention fades, so does our purpose. But the ones who actually change things really change things. Don't wait for permission to start. They don't wait for a crowd to show up. They move forward anyway. They create in silence. They build when no one is clapping. They chase growth, not recognition. And because of that, they become something far more powerful than popular. They become unshakable.
You don't need to be seen to matter. You don't need a spotlight to have impact. What you need is resolve. What you need is discipline when no one is watching. What you need is the kind of belief that burns quietly, but never goes out. That's what creates greatness. Not noise, but consistency. The truth is, the world doesn't change because of the people we talk about. It changes because of the people who keep going when no one's talking at all. The people who stay focused when it would be easier to quit. The people who invest in their own growth, even when there's no obvious reward. Those are the ones who shift the culture. Those are the ones who redefine what's possible. You might be in a season right now where nothing seems to be moving. You're putting in the work, and it feels like no one cares. You're staying late, waking up early, pushing yourself, and there's no recognition, no reward. But just because you don't see the result yet doesn't mean you're not getting strong. Just because the world hasn't noticed you doesn't mean you're not becoming who you were meant to be. Keep building, keep creating, keep refining your craft, not to prove anything to anyone else, but to honor the vision you've been given. Do it for the younger version of you, who dreamed big. Do it for the future version of you, who will one day look back and say, I'm proud of how far we've come. Because when the day comes, and it will, when the silence breaks and people finally notice, when they start to cheer and call you brilliant and wonder where you came from, you'll smile, not because you needed their applause, but because you know exactly where you came from. You came from the quiet, from the unseen hours, from the moments when no one believed but you kept believing anyway. By then the recognition won't define you, the success won't surprise you, because you didn't wait to be seen. You became, you did the work in silence, you earned every and now you're not just visible, you're unstoppable, and the best part, you don't need the world to tell you who you are. You already know.